By late July, one zucchini plant can look like it is trying to own the whole garden. Big leaves flop over the path. Stems crawl into the peppers. The bottom leaves turn yellow, then spotted, then dusty with mildew. And the worst part is, it feels normal. You give it room, then it asks for more. You water carefully, then disease still starts down low where the air is trapped and the leaves stay damp. But picture that same plant standing upright on a plain wooden stake, lower stem bare, leaves lifted, fruit hanging where you can see it. Can a cheap stake and twine really save space, keep the plant cleaner, and give you more zucchini? The strange part is that this works best when you stop treating zucchini like a ground plant. I am Jack Merrill, and at 77, I like garden fixes that do not need a catalog, a gadget, or a second mortgage. Give me a stake, some twine, and a plant that needs manners. That is what you are going to learn here. How to plant zucchini for vertical growing. How to stake it before it sprawls. How to tie the stem without choking it. How to prune the bottom leaves, spot trouble early, and even clean up a squash bed that has already turned into a jungle. Most folks think vertical gardening is for tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, and vines that grab hold on their own. Zucchini is different. It will not climb for you. It has to be trained. But once you lift that main stem and keep the lower growth cleared, the whole plant changes. More light, better airflow, easier picking. But the whole method depends on choosing the right kind of plant before the first seedling ever goes in the ground. Start with the plant, not the stake. For vertical zucchini, you want a bush-type summer squash, something like Emerald Delight, or another compact zucchini that makes one main stem and keeps its fruit close. Do not pick a long-running squash that wants to crawl 6 feet across the garden. That plant is not being stubborn. It is built to roam. Then give that bush plant a backbone before it needs one. A piece of electrical conduit works. So does bamboo, rebar, or any straight, sturdy stake you already have. You want about 3 feet standing above the soil, and you want it driven in hard, not wiggled in with 2 fingers, hammered in. Because a good zucchini plant gets heavy fast. Leaves stack up like dinner plates. Fruit tucks in along the stem. After a rain, the whole thing can feel twice its weight. If the support is weak, the plant leans, twists, and that main stem can split right where you needed it strongest. A firm stake changes the plant from the start. It gives the stem one clear direction, up. Once the stake is in, the next mistake is planting the zucchini too far away from the very thing meant to hold it. Set the transplant right beside the stake, not 6 inches away, not close enough that you can tug it over later. The main stem should be able to rise next to that support without crossing open soil. That little detail matters because zucchini does not stay polite for long. 1 week it looks like a neat young plant. Then the leaves widen, the stem thickens, and suddenly you are trying to tie up a plant that already chose the wrong direction. Dig the hole a touch deeper than the pot. Set the plant so the soil comes up near the seed leaves. Those are the first little leaves it made, and burying that lower section gives the plant a sturdier start, like setting a fence post deeper instead of balancing it on top. Then mulch the base. Straw, shredded leaves, clean grass clippings, whatever you trust in your garden. Keep it pulled just a finger width away from the stem, but cover the soil around it. Mulch holds moisture where those shallow roots need it. It keeps rain from splashing soil onto the leaves. And on a hot day, it keeps that root zone from baking. If the base stays steady, the top can grow fast. And as soon as those leaves expand, the plant may show a silvery pattern that looks like trouble, but often is not. Before you reach for the pruners, turn one leaf over and look close. A lot of zucchini and summer squash leaves are born with that pale, silvery wash across the top. It sits in the leaf tissue like a pattern in the skin. The leaf still feels firm, the green parts still look alive, and the markings are usually spread pretty evenly, almost like somebody brushed them on the same way from leaf to leaf. That is not the same as powdery mildew. Powdery mildew looks more like flour dusted onto the plant. Little white puffs, loose patches, spots that seem to sit on top of the leaf instead of inside it. Many times it starts where folks do not look first, on the underside, down in the shade where air hangs still. Here is why that difference matters. If you cut off every healthy mottled leaf, you take away the plant's solar panels. Fewer leaves means less energy, slower growth, and fewer squash filling out. But if you ignore real mildew, it can move upward until the strongest, most productive leaves are coated. So check before you cut. Pattern in the leaf is usually harmless. Dust on the leaf deserves attention. The real disease control does not begin with sprays. It begins the moment the stem starts leaning. Once that zucchini stem has 6 to 8 inches of lift, do not wait for it to flop flat. That is the first real turning point. The plant will usually start leaning away from the stake before it looks tall enough to train. That lean is your signal. If you wait until the stem is heavy, thick, and dragging across the soil, you are no longer guiding it. You are wrestling it. Use soft twine, cloth strips, or garden ties. Loop the tie around the stake first, then around the main stem, and leave just enough room for the stem to grow. Snug is fine. Tight is trouble. A tight tie can pinch the stem, slow the flow of water, and leave a weak spot right where the whole plant is depending on support. Work slow around the crowded parts. By the time a zucchini looks ready to stand up, it may already have flowers, leaf stems, and little fruit tucked under the canopy. Do not yank the plant into position. Ease it upright, find the main stem, and tie that. Not a leaf stalk, not a fruit stem, the main stem. Then keep going as it climbs. Add another tie about every 4 inches. That spreads the weight into a column instead of forcing one bend to carry the whole plant. That is how a sprawling plant starts becoming vertical. But tying alone only solves the space problem. The disease problem is handled by the part that feels wrong the first time you do it. Now comes the part that makes a lot of gardeners nervous. As that zucchini climbs, start removing the lower leaves along the stem. Not the fresh, working leaves up top, the tired ones down low, the ones touching soil, hiding under the canopy, rubbing against other leaves, or showing spots of mildew. Cut them clean at the base of the leaf stem. Do not tear them off. A torn strip on the main stem is an open door for trouble. Use clean pruners or a sharp knife, and take a few at a time as the plant gains height. What you want is a bare lower stem. That sounds wrong at first, because a big zucchini plant looks strong when it is covered in leaves. But down at soil level, those leaves are not helping much. They are shaded, they stay wet after watering, they collect dirt, they trap still air around the crown of the plant like a damp blanket. And damp, shaded leaves are where disease gets comfortable. Lift that canopy, and the whole base changes. Sunlight reaches the stem, air moves through, water dries instead of sitting. You can see the fruit, the flowers, and the first sign of trouble before it spreads. This is not punishment. It is butchering in the clean sense. Trim away what is past its prime so the best part stays useful. The plant keeps its productive top. It sheds the weak bottom. Once the plant is upright and clean underneath, the next question is whether it will still set fruit without all that sprawling growth. Yes, it will still set fruit. A zucchini does not need to sprawl across the dirt to make male and female flowers. The flowers come from the plant, not from the direction the stem is pointing. Tie it upright, keep the top growing, and it will still bloom the same way. The real question is pollination. Male flowers show up on skinny stems. Female flowers have that tiny baby zucchini behind the blossom. Pollen has to move from one to the other. Bees usually handle that work, especially if you have flowers nearby pulling them into the garden. Zinnias, marigolds, basil in bloom, anything that keeps bees visiting. If the little zucchini turns yellow, shrivels, or stops growing at 2 inches long, do not blame the stake first. That is usually poor pollination. The backup plan is simple. Pick a fresh male flower, peel back the petals, and rub the pollen right into the center of the female flower. One careful push is enough. And the biggest surprise is that you do not have to start this way. You can rescue a bed that already looks half lost. Start with the ugly part. Before you ever put a stake in the ground, take a sharp pair of pruners and remove every leaf that is already sick. Powdery leaves, yellow leaves, leaves lying flat on damp soil. Cut them close to the main stem, clean and tight, so you are not leaving a little stump to rot. That one job changes the whole bed. A sprawling zucchini makes its own trouble. The big leaves stack over each other, The ground stays wet, and air cannot move through. Then mildew gets comfortable. Bugs get cover. You reach in to harvest and snap something because you cannot see where the stem runs. Once those lower leaves are gone, the plant looks half naked for a minute. That is all right. You have opened the middle. Light reaches the crown. Air gets under the canopy. And sometimes you find enough bare soil to tuck in lettuce, basil, or another small crop along the edge. Now push your conduit, stake, or pole into the soil beside the existing plant, not through the root ball. Go slow. That zucchini stem is tougher and more flexible than it looks. Tie the top first. Capture where the plant is headed. Then work down the stem, adding loose loops of twine where it needs help. For a few days it may look crooked and uncomfortable, but the plant knows exactly where the sun is. That is the turn most gardeners miss. The zucchini was never too strong, it was too low. All that growth, all those dinner plate leaves, all that heavy fruit setting under the canopy, it becomes a roof pressed down against wet soil. The plant is not failing because it has too much life in it. It is failing because that life gets piled into darkness. A stake does not make zucchini fancy. It makes the plant readable. You can see the stem. You can see the flowers. You can spot the fruit before it turns into a club. Sun reaches places that used to stay damp, and the plant spends less energy surviving its own mess. That is the lesson here. Sometimes you do not feed more, spray more, or plant more. You lift what is already there into better conditions. So the open question comes down to one practical answer. What should you do the next time you plant squash? So yes, a bush zucchini can be trained upward with a cheap stake and a little twine. Choose a bush type. Plant it close to a firm stake. Mulch the soil. Tie the main stem every few inches as it grows. Strip only the lower tired or diseased leaves. Watch for real mildew, not harmless leaf markings. Hand pollinate only when the bees are not doing the job. This week, stake one squash plant, even if it is already sprawling. Lift what is there into the light. Tell me in the comments, is your biggest squash trouble space mildew or poor pollination? Thanks for watching.